righteous fielding of the clandestine army. John, that was the end, okay? Now, Lenin, Guevara, and Fanon, all in their particular fashion, postulate that before revolution can take place, all other forms of redress must be exhausted, clearly exhausted. Electoral processes must be broken down. The confidence of the electorate in any of the old forms completely shattered. Confidence in the ability of the old system to honestly organize any aspects of public life must be shaken to the core. Years and years ago, it may have been a acceptable tactic to organize a people's ticket of solid work and revolutionary credentials and arm it with the ideal platform, only to be defeated by the mudslinging opportunist warlords, demonstrably inferior, scum-willing pigs, then pass out a pamphlet to explain to the people how the system has failed them, or speak it in perishing square, or years ago in the campus hall. Today, it is not a tactic; it's a counter-revolution. After 40 years, it's pretty clear that it will not be suffice. Years ago, quote, working with, end quote, and attempting to influence union leadership may have been judicious, but the government has long since infiltrated and bought off the leadership and legislated away the strikes. Union hall speeches and pamphlets passing are playing at revolution. It isn't revolutionary or materialist to disconnect things, to disconnect revolutionary consciousness from revolutionizing activities, to build consciousness with political agitation and educational issues, making alone it's idealistic rather than materialists. The effect has been reformism rather than revolution. When any election is held, it will fortify rather than destroy the credibility of the power brokers. When we participate in this election to win instead of disrupt, we're leading to its credibility and destroying our own, with all the factors of control over the electoral process in the hands of the minority ruling class. The People's Party can always be made to seem isolated, unimportant, even extraneous. If these tactics still give the appearance of revolution to some after decades of miscarriage, we are justified in replacing them as vanguard. When people begin to express their disgust at the demagogic and reformist maneuvers of the vanguard parties, they will discover in real action a new form of political activity which in no way resembles the old.
These politics are the politics of leaders and organizers living inside history who take the lead with their brains and their muscles in the fight for freedom. These politics are revolutionary and social, and these new facts, which the native will now come to know, exist only in action. They are the essence of the fight which explodes the old colonial truths and reveals unexpected facets, which brings out new meanings and pinpoints the contradictions camouflaged by these facts. The people engaged in the struggle, who became of it command, who because of it command and know these facts, go forward, freed from colonialism and forewarned of all attempts at mystification, inoculated against all national anthems, violence alone, violence committed by the people, violence organized and educated by its leaders, makes it possible for the masses to understand social truths and gives the key to them. Without that struggle, without that knowledge of the practice of action, there's nothing but a fancy dress parade and a blare of the trumpets. There's nothing save a minimum of readaptation, a few reforms at the top, a flag waving, and down there at the bottom, an undivided mass still living in the Middle Ages, endlessly marking time. That's Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth. In the general retreat to avoid full commitment to write the discomfort out of revolution, some have raised a debate among us that has degenerated into name-calling, quoting the same authorities to validate diametrically opposed ideas, and ultimately creating a process that is dividing us into two mutually exclusive or contradictory groups.
Yep, that's what the system does right now. Currently, it divides us, keeps us dividing as we are playing team sports with politics. Politics should not be team sports, but that's what they do. They create those things, and they still do. The overall effects to reduce us to caricatures, where more than one individual is involved in any life situation. The fact of subjectivism will always make differences based on opinions and interpretations. A problem in exchanges, in reaching a necessary means for the institution of collective activity. Some debates will always be carried on. However, on the basics, we must somehow agree or nothing will get done. All opinions are not of equal value, and there is such a thing as counterproductive revisionism. This is a ableist word, but he uses stupidity, is not unknown to our long-range political policymakers. Participation in electoral politics organized by the enemy state. After reorganizing that the whole process must be discredited as a conditional step into revolution, and particularly participation that tends to authenticate this process is the opposite of revolution. He's saying that doing electoralism and elections doesn't do shit. It's time to do the revolution. It's a tactic for the ultra-rightist. With history as the guide, we could never make such monumental errors. The history of the U.S., the blood-soaked, urine-steeped essence of its being, the wreckage and demise of its human character under the wheels of the 200-year-old headlong flight that, with heedless, frightened animals at the controls of a machine that has mastered them, allows for no appeal to the strictly ideological level. George Wallace or Adolf Hitler would fare better at the polls of an honest election than Huey Newton and Tom Hayden. But again, what is an honest election after the fact of monopoly capital?
Repression is indeed a part of revolution, a natural aspect of antithesis, the always to be expected defense attack reflex of the beleaguered toothless tiger. All arguments against this fundamental fact are false and labored to the point of being completely illogical. Can power be seriously challenged without a response? Will the robber baron, the tycoon, the Fuhrer allow us to seize his privilege without resistance? Can we steal it away from the greatest bandit of all time with sleight of hand alone? Incredible. The fascists understand the value of mass psychology, are familiar with its use, and hold all the important implements of its effective control. But they are not aware of our existence and our general strategy regarding the reaching of people. The whole situation can be reduced to a minority ruling clique engaging the people's vanguard elements for control of the masses. The ruling clique approaches its task with a, quote, what to think program The vanguard elements have the much more difficult job of promoting, quote, how to think. No tactic can be ignored or discounted in such a battle. Power responds to all threats. The response is repression. If the threat is a small one, the fascist tactic is to laugh it off, ignore it, isolate it with its defense mechanism, media. The greater the threat, the greater the corresponding violence from power. The only effective challenge to power is one that is broad enough to make isolation impossible, and intensive enough to cause repression to affect the normal lifestyle of as many members of the society as possible. By compromising and playing at class war, we lose. If some effective means of threatening to wield power is not used in the opening stages of revolutionary activity, repression will concentrate itself on the vanguard elements only, when the ideal situation is for the people to feel the raw essence of power.
Nothing can bend consciousness more effectively than a false arrest or a no-knock invasion. Careless, panic-stricken gunfire. These will frighten some, anger others. Common sense alone tells me whom the people will turn their anger against. Perhaps for a short time they will be angry at us, but since the pig is a pig, it won't be long before this anger is channeled in the right direction. So he's talking about all this anger is like unsystemized. It's unorganized, but it's anger. And he says that like a lot of people turn to us, but when we start redirecting the anger to the ones that are creating that, then they can have a revolutionary mindset, and maybe we can come up with strategies and tactics that are more organized, more precise, more tactful to win the struggle of revolution. That's what I'm getting from this. Revolution builds in stages. It isn't cool or romantic. It's bold and vicious. It's stalking and being stalked. The opposition rises above our level of violence to repress us, and our forces learning how to counter this repression, and again, pulling ourselves above their level of violence. Because any revolutionary, we are starting to arm people in Minecraft for defensive violence in Minecraft. That's what Vanguard parties should be doing. That's what these people defense forces should be doing, arming proletariats, teaching them defense mechanisms in order to defend themselves against reactionary forces, and hopefully organize ourselves to become a revolutionary force. That process repeats itself again and again until finally the level is reached. Therefore, the real power of the people is felt, and the ruling class is suppressed. The power of the people lies in a greater potential violence. And this power of the people, their greater potential violence, can be brought to fruition only if the conditions in an urban society can create by the application of the Foucault theory, F-O-C-O theory. And underneath there it says, the Foucault theory grew out of the Cuban Revolution and refers to the, quote, more or less slow building up through the guerrilla warfare and mobile strategic forces, which could be the nucleus of the People's Army and of the future socialist state. Do you hear that, everybody? Do you hear that? Developing things outside of the system, and then to put those revolutionary institutions into play. And this was Register Debray, Revolution in the Revolution, Armed Struggles and Political Struggles in Latin America. All right, let's go back up. The Foucault theory can be effective only when it does not allow itself to be isolated from the people, thus exposing itself to a vast superior firepower of the corporate state. Corporate state being the capitalist state.
1 second, I gotta take a bed.
You want me to go ahead and read? Okay.
Nope, just had to swallow that.
The star is just referring to Jurassic.
Okay.
I don't know how to say it.
There is no doubt Fidel's FOCO was the motor to the revolution in Cuba. Nor can there be any doubt that Fidel's organizational genius made sure that the FOCO remained in the central of the much bigger revolutionary movement.
Center.
Center of the much bigger revolutionary movement, which it controlled or guided for its military and political advantage. The FOCO may well be the best tactic to mount the motor, but it needs a long period of preparation, intensive organizational work to set up an efficient, reliable machinery which will not only generate the atmosphere for armed struggle by FOCOs, but will also guarantee their logistic, communication, survival programs, and propaganda network. The traditional communist parties of the world claim that they are doing just that, and have been, mostly peacefully, for 40 years. That is not what Breher had in mind when he said that there have been, quote, real stages of hard underground life. Bahar and the New Left revolutionaries all over the world know very well that a revolutionary lifestyle is a warrior's lifestyle. By stages, he meant stages of combat, and that is precisely the way in which revolutionaries can be honed into a kind of organization capable of leading a people's war. That was by Gerasi.
Mm-hmm.
We are at an impasse now, because the next level of revolutionary consciousness and activity cannot be reached without calling down on the nation a corresponding and perhaps over-reactionary repression.
So they're describing what we need to do. We need to develop systems outside. They're talking about dual power. They're talking about a people's army. The people's army represents the people. The people's army is nothing without the mass base to organize things and to keep things flowing and creating like networks and stuff that support. Both those entities, the people's army and the mass base, work hand in hand together. That's why I believe in creating, and so does George Jackson, creating what is called a mass line, which is a spiral effect. It's not a straight line, it spirals. Kind of like the circle that in Two Spirits book. And it is not the people who dread this next level of commitment. They do not understand the significance of it as yet. They dread and fear rest with some of the old guard elements. I refer you again to Mao. Quote, when revolution fails, it is the fault of the vanguard party, end quote. Some of the fear is an honest fear that revolution will be repressed entirely. These thinkers have historical references that roll them back to Europe and to the time of Schmittler's Germany and Italy in the 20s and 30s. But I say that can never happen here. That was too long ago, so far away, and none of those European countries have 30 million irate black people on their hands. None of that ever had to happen for the same reason that we don't have to allow it to happen. All reactionaries movements depend principally on the handful of individuals, sometimes one individual, because because we believe in collective leadership. They believe in individuals, and they believe in great manning one person, like General Washington, without realizing that General Washington is nothing without his mass base. These are many thousands of ways to correct individuals. The best way is to send one armed expert. I don't mean to outshoot him with logic. I mean correct him, slay him, assassinate him with thuggies. Thuggy. Ooh, I don't know if I was allowed to say that. But silent pistols, shotguns, with high power rifles shooting from 400 yards away and behind a rock. Suffocation, strangulations, what's that say? Crucifixion? Crucifixion, burning with flamethrowers, dispatching a boom, auto accidents happening all day. People drown, get poleaxed, poleaxed, breathe noxious gas, get stabbed, get poisoned with bad water, ratsbane, germicide, hemlock, arsenic. What is that one? Strychnine.
Strychnine.
LSPD, BDD, 25 concentrate, cyanide, is that hydro? I can't say it.
I can't. Synac.
Hydrocyanic acid.
Cyanic.
Is that Vitrol?
Vitrol.
Vitrol. A snake could bite him. Nicotine oil is deadly, and a dose of dope. There's deadly nightshade. Oh my gosh, he's just coming up with all ways to figure this out. What is this? Belladon, Datra, Wolfsbane, Foxglove, Aconite. I can't say this. I don't know that word. Ptomaine. Oh my gosh.
I know the next word. I don't know that word.
What's the next word?
Botulism.
Botulism and the death of 1,000 cuts. But of course, won't work.
But a curse.
A lot of things.
A curse won't work.
A curse won't work. Right.
We're going to have to fight to win. The logic of procrastination has been destroyed. A people can never be so repressed that they can't strike back in some way. We will purge the poltroons and fight, or just ignore them. The reality of power's automatic defense reflexes makes it possible for us to measure our own effectiveness. Their efforts to seriously repress us indicate that we have reached people, that we are finally in the fight, and we cannot ever be truly repressed. There is quite simply no way for an established government to defeat an internal, determined, aggressive enemy, especially in an urban society. The mechanics, logic, and logistics of urban people's guerrilla warfare cannot be defeated.
Based.
In the opening stages of such a conflict, before a unified left can be established, before most people have accepted the inevitability of war, before we are able militarily to organize massive violence, we must depend on limited, selective violence tied to an exact political purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In the early service of the people, there must be totally committed, professional revolutionaries who understand that all human life is meaningless if it is not accompanied by the controls that determine its quality. I am one of these. My life has absolutely no value. I'm the man under hatches, the desperate one. We will make the revolution. Nothing can stop us. We are not intimidated by the specter of repression. We've already repressed. The Black Legion and their terror leaves us cold, unafraid. We will meet it with a counter-terror. And that group is, the Black Legion is an armed anti-labor T group active in the 30s, reputedly financed by sections of the automotive industry.
All right. We'll never allow ourselves to be immobilized by the tactic that actually works better for us. The lynch murders of a friend. It makes me angry, not afraid. I am the next man that must be lynched. My forefather trembled when his brother was lynched. But my brother's emulation means war to the death, war of outmost, war of the knife. Violence is not supposed to work in America for no one that is, except the quote omnipotent administrators, end quote. But this has not yet to be proved to my satisfaction, since I know that a bomb is a bomb. It's twisted steel, shattered concrete, and dismembered men everywhere else in the world. Why not those made in America? A bullet fired from an assault rifle in the hands of a Vietnamese liberation fighter will kill a pig in Vietnam. Why won't it kill a pig in the place where pigs are made? No worries. Counterterrorism is a facet of urban people's guerrilla warfare. It's our logical response to the repressive measures taken by the enemy state to contain us in an early stage of the rebellion. Our military cadres involved in this activity has the tactical advantage over the establishment's terrorists only if we remain clandestine. While working at the direction of the political front, we must remain separate from it. The ranks of these early soldiers must be absolutely impervious to infiltration. Precautions must be made to keep this cadre impenetrable to the police spies and less committed comrades. In The Coming of the New International, John Garassi observed that. Go ahead and do it.
As a leading pragmatist, Lenin believed that the only way a revolution could come about in Europe in his time was by the creation of a revolutionary organization. That organization had to be tight, well-trained, loyal to its central committee, dedicated, and narrow, not only for ideological reasons, hence purges and sectarian splits were to be encouraged during its formative years, but also for security.
This is John Garassi.
Yep. And Lenin states that the more we confine the membership of such an organization to people who are professionally engaged in revolutionary activity and who have been professionally trained in the art of combating the police, the more difficult it will be to unearth the organization.
So the more organized we are, the more that we have an ideological front that is strictly and disciplined, the more successful, the more organized, the more consolidated, the more that we are honed in like a spear, we are more directing our revolution in the correct directions. Even through like deviations should be corrected along the way. That's the point of being disciplined, is seeing those deviations and correcting, because when you correct and criticize, it becomes sharper and better and it grows. Sorry.
Okay, one of Jonathan's reports contains the following. I find it almost impossible to trust comrades, not after all of this. They say Gloves Davis, a black pig, killed Fred Hampton while he was asleep. I certainly don't have to mention all the so-called defectors who are now appearing before government committees testifying for the state. They were infiltrators to begin with. The House enslaved people who ran to the high sheriff as soon as someone whispered revolt. I think I hate them worse than I hate the sheriff or the quote-unquote owner.
I'm just a young slave, you say, trying to understand and cope with my environment. I know personalities have no place in the revolution, but every time I think of Davis, Jesse B, Simple, and Karenga, and the rest of these murderous turncoats, idiots, my trigger finger fairly inches. Non-persons like Karenga, Leroy Jones, and the other right-wing black people are intelligent enough to know that that what they are doing, we cannot accuse them with ease, that we can excuse the average brother who has had no opportunity or inclination to search. The mantle of ignorance doesn't cover their behavior. They have to know that when they attack socialism, the communist ideal and revolution, that they are not logically or illogically depending, attacking all that is white, etc. They know that Ho Chi Minh isn't white, or Chairman Mao, or Nkrumah, Lumumba, or Touré. They know that there isn't but one fight going on across this planet, the one between the imperialist forces of capitalism and its victims. They know that it was for work that we were kidnapped. What else do you feed a slave for? Do you feed a slave for? These black men, if you can swallow their their shallow shit, have had time to study. Some have traveled. They, quote, know, end quote, that it was capitalist agriculture, economics that first causes our pain, and that the only change since then is the decline of the agricultural elite and the rise of the modern bourgeoisie. And a sweatshop displaced the plantation. Could it have escaped? Could it have escaped their notice at all that African states were really liberated? That really liberated themselves, booted out the foreign businessman, and are now socialist states. And underneath there's Rung Karenga, head of the black nationalist organization known as US. Okay.
No, I think the strongest suggestion is that they are working for the government. The new house enslaved people. And what better way is there for them to sell themselves to us than to scream, black, 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 black. Like Tom Maboya, whose whole service for the CIA was to redirect the revolutionary rage of the people into a thing more compatible with the interests on Western businessmen. They are spies. Death to spies. I don't think it is a personality clash at all for us to teach these black pigs that we will not be altered from our course, that the reward for counter-revolution is death. We can't continue to expect or wish for loyalty to the people. We'll have to demand it. And that's both from these cowardly fat mouths who come to us in their disguise, quote, cultural nationalism, and from the class defectors who Tommy gun us in our sleep. I'll make an example of Gloves Davis, even if I have to, I'm not going to say that word, hitchhike to Chicago. They'll find him strung up to a streetlight by his heels with our sign burned in his forehead. Tasks must be devised to guard ourselves against the possibility of those fools getting into our separate military groups. There is no way to stop the infiltration of an above-ground political group, but we can guard the clandestine army by 1. Letting no one choose us, even if they did know about us and could find us. We do the choosing. 2. Once we choose someone to do the people's military work, they should be isolated and tested thoroughly, and their backgrounds checked.
There are patterns to people's lives, especially black people, that if studying one can easily spot pig tendencies and connections. Checks could be run through some of our political people who have friends or sympathizers who own, say, used car lots or any business that generally deals in credit. A great deal can be learned through the various credit check institutions these days. Well, we'll be using one of their own instruments for the, quote, real purpose that they invented it against them. Generally, that's the way it will be throughout the war. Testing can be developed into a science, written stuff to help us reestablish of ourselves the pattern of this soldier background. You know, full commitment generally comes as a result of awareness, and awareness is the product of study and observation. The things a person has gone to the effort of reading and analyzing say a great deal about his character. In other words, very few black intelligence agents will have studied Marx, Mao, Lenin, Fanon, cats like the, quote, in-depth. Cats like that, quote, in-depth. You can generally tell what processes a man's mind has gone through by what he studies, observes. Examine even the post office will do that. Written and oral tests. Drugs are not to be discounted either. oral tests under truth drugs. He's talking about like testing these people out when they get like caught up, because these kind of people would be tortured to give out information. So what they're trying to do is say, this is an element that can happen, and we need to try and test these people and see if they can get through these things, because we need people on those things in order to be able to perpetuate the armed struggle. So they'll get caught, like there's if anything, like the Algerian war, like there's plenty of people being tortured for information. Then you have the ultimate test, the things that no agent of the establishment could do, like assassinate the local head of the Gestapo, bring him out of isolation, blindfolded, arm him, tell him what to do and where to go afterwards, and wait, etc. I think you could be fairly sure of him after a series of tests like these. We're only thinking of terms of a small, highly trained, super secret, counter Kluxist vanguard group. And they mean and counter to the KKK.
However, dealing with people you've known over the years and have seen tested and fire already is best. Like me, you, and your comrades, and mine. The black people who joined the armed expeditionary forces just for profit. The cats who steal them blind and hustle the other suckers. They are starting to stir, to become aware also. This Vietnam adventure on the part of the fascist has vastly changed the whole relationship between the masses and the ruling class. Can you detect the subtle changes? The really ugly side of imperialism is being demonstrated for not just the people who suffer its effects abroad, but also to the little sleepy guy here inside the US. They're starting now to make the link between foreign wars and foreign businesses, and they're better able to make the comparisons and conclusions. Ho Chi Minh versus Kai, for example. People are all starting to say such things as, quote, some form of socialism is the answer. Time to move. We must show them that resistance is possible and that there is a hard left cadre willing to lead it. Conditions are right now, for the beginnings at least, of a revolutionary culture. These conditions have always been present here inside the black colony, but no leadership until now.
Just real quick, when was this book produced? Like in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about the time is now then. It's always been the time.
Yep. If we can keep the Panther alive by protecting the party workers with a show of underground strength, watching the Watcher, assassinating the assassins, I think the people will start to listen to them. Black people have grown very cynical to all groups who make claims in the area of problem solving, since there have been 1 million groups and no problem solved. The physical conditions are right for the start of a protracted war.
Protracted People's War. See, that's another stance of a Maoist. This is George Jackson's a Maoist. I don't know. We have yet to hit on the tactics for control of attitudes. However, how to make people organize and resist the ruin of their lives. And it is for certain we'll never figure out the right tactics if the pigs keep killing off the butt and busting all the vanguard elements. The time has come. Bobby's seize the time makes sense. We can build a mass movement without finding some way to stay alive long enough to let them know we're here, and that we're not just out to play on them, that we are finally prepared to totally commit ourselves to the fight, that we will never abandon them when the pigs move in with their pistols and paddy wagons, that we're willing to take it to the graveyard, a show of organizational skills and valid establishmentism will always bring on violence from the fascist. The people know this. They must also know that this violence can be countered before they'll believe, and respond. Quote, let the ruling class tremble at the communist revolution, end quote. That's my favorite line in all of Marx and Engels. From Fanon, it's, quote, the time for talking has ended. The time for acting has begun. And that was in the 70s. Long live the gorilla, John. That was Jonathan Jackson. The counter-terrorist faceless, nameless specialist in all martial arts is the first soldier of the people. His violence will be swift, surprising, explosive, and tied into a clearly political Marxist. In some cases, the assassination, it may be wise to make them appear as accidents, but that still doesn't reduce the political content.
These workers, properly distributed and going about their tasks with secret, flawless precision and in perfect unison with the political front, will shake the fascists to their very foundations. Their limited, highly selective violence is the absolute minimum for enforcing the demands of the people. Anything less will fail. We are not dealing with nice people who will throw down their guns and submit to our will because we outnumber them. From the vantage point of established power in history, they know that one armed man can control 1,000. People's war is not polite or proper. It is not possible to limit the scope and range of violence to what the enemy will bear without reacting. Any ideal, any activity that may do violence to their control will never be permitted. People's war is improvisation and more improvisation. It is organizing the masses around their realistic needs and moving them against whatever forces restrict their passage to power.
Love that.
I repeat, realistic, day-to-day needs should be the basis of organizing people and making them conscious of revolution. That the world, the universe, must revolve, that it will stop, stagnate, and die for no man's privilege. If we accept revolution, we must accept all that it implies: repression, counter-teism, days filled with work, nervous strain, prison, funerals. Our present problem as soldiers is to protect our political people at their work and enforce the increasing demands that the people, as a political result, will make upon power. The soldier is the counter-teist, the bodyguard, the first of a military vanguard. The distance between him and the class enemy is a free fire zone.
Do you see he mentioned that like there's people working the revolution, doing the things, organizing, bringing people's consciousness, educating. At the same time, the People's Army is supposed to protect that and defend that. Love that. Love that. He has to be the baddest and the strongest of our kind. Calm, sure, self-possessed, completely familiar with the fact that the only thing that stands between black men and violent death are the fast break, quick draws, and snapshot. Terrible Jonathan's teeth. Wait, is that right? Terrible Jonathan's teethed at the barrel of the political tool, hardened against the concrete of the most uncivilized jungles of the planet. Chicago, St. Louis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, tested in a dozen fires. Quote, tall, slim youth, end quote. The new black person with a gun and the eyes of the hunter of men. These comrades must make the first contribution. They will be the first to fall. We gather up their bodies, clean them, kiss them with a smile. Their funerals should be gala affairs of home-brewed wine and revolutionary music to do the dance of death by. We should be sad, only that it's taken us so many generations to produce them. Building consciousness and revolutionary culture against the repressive natural defense reflexes of the system means taking the realistic day-to-day issues like hunger, the need for clothing and housing, joblessness. It involves provoking repression, feeding on it. The fact that economic prisoners in legions and the processes used by the oppressors to judge and condemn them must be used as the rallying cry for revolution. Economic crime and even crimes of passion against the oppressors must be understood as rebellion. Even funerals can be used as an issue, since there will be so many of them. Improvising, what's that word? Improvising on reality.
Improvising. Good job.
Yeah, on the reality is the key principle underlying the building of the united left in raising the consciousness of the people. It will give us our tactics.
In the Black colony and other depressed areas of the country, there will be less difficulty in organizing, mobilizing, and altering the attitudes of the people toward their class enemies. However, in the areas of the class structure that can be said to be, quote, making it, affecting attitudes toward a revolutionary change in the system of production and distribution will, of course, call for the destruction of their comfort, the, quote, manufacturing of a, quote, condition where they will be either neutral or complementary to the revolutionary effort. The psychological effect of our secret army, the real destructive effect it can have, an increasing pervasive underground press with new emphasis on a, quote, mass style, the popularization of the revolutionary culture, and then the elevating of it, both under the direction of an ultra-aggressive political party. These three, with no element missing, connected to the realistic issues, form the basis of our only hope. There will be no educating, no consciousness, no revolutionary culture, no forward movement without these three elements working with the harmony of a healthy organism. To sum up, the existence of a political vanguard precedes the existence of any of the other elements of a truly revolutionary culture. If the thrust of this political vanguard is effective, demonstrating realistic, sincere designs aimed at the overthrow of established power, it will be attacked by the built-in automatic survival instincts of the established power complex, creating and supporting the need to counterimpose the violence of power. Without the ability to organize a counterforce to neutralize the violence of established power, antithesis dies. We are not contending with fools who will allow us to simply walk in and organize people to war against them.
That's the thing, that we are in a defensive violence situation. That the stage is defensive violence. The stage is arming the proletariat and defending all the cultural and revolutionary structures that we create, that the people create, that the mass base creates. We must protect those things as we move forward in the revolution and destroying things along the way. People can be picked up. People can be consolidated in. People can be going to learn more about what is going on, to systemize their ideas and thinking along the way. Revolution can happen, and people along the way can join it as it's going. All the serious challenges will be met with panic and repression. That is axiomatic. We must not allow ourselves to be hunted, imprisoned, or murdered. We will never yield to terror tactics. We will organize a violence of our own, hidden and more aggressive. We fight from a position of weakness, but there are tactical devices that, if employed without restraint, will afford us a very real advantage. The fascists believe that one guard with a machine gun can control 1,000 men, but I know that this guard cannot watch all 1,000 at once. While his attention and gun are trained on a gathering of 10 who whisper freedom, closing on his blind side, my knife will claim his life. A political thrust is immediately followed by a hidden military thrust in the opening phase of the revolutionary culture. Leadership must be protected. And if it helps people bit by bit to understand and relate to the necessity of violence and any plan to overthrow anything, quote, overthrow means violence. In our case, it means putting to death. This is the last time I'll repeat this for those of us who, for one dread or another, seem not to have receptive. Fighting originates from the will-developed kick in the ass. The proletariat, the working class, is still the most revolutionary class, and still the real gravedigger of capitalist society. However, the notion that they alone can or must carry the revolution is too ridiculous and simplistic for any serious consideration at all. The industrial working force of today's modern industrial state can be pivotal to carrying out a successful revolution against the state. But their power and numbers have been vastly reduced by such developments as automation. See what I mean? Automation is deproletarianizing people and causing people to be lumpenized. Are you there, Joe?
You weren't done yet?
Or was I not done?
Yeah. You said, but by such developed, such as automation, and you stopped.
Automation, military, corporation, elitism. Sorry. And the connections through marriage of the government, military and heads. The new class of National Guard pigs. Who's being deployed to like Chicago?
Yep, the National Guard pigs.
Yeah, okay, here you go. The new class of National Guard pigs. They broke the postal strikes, government-controlled unions, right to work laws, etc. What the fuck are they doing now? All right, go ahead.
I don't appreciate the way Avon was talking to anybody in here. You do have blatant racism in your bio, and you need to take care of that. The argument that centers on the ideal that all workers must be politically educated before the revolution can support a violent thrust verges on the absurd. If they're arguing with me, can we just get rid of them? Today, nearly 6.5 million of them can't find work, and those who are working seem to be convinced that foreign wars and armaments spending are more desirable than unemployment. Of course, they should be made conscious of their exploitation, and they must be moved to act in their behalf. Those who feel that they are doing well, and those who actually are doing well, should be introduced to the fact of, quote, surplus value. Surplus labor in Marxian economics is the number of hours a worker can work in excess of what is required to provide him with minimum subsistence. The product of surplus labor is known as surplus value. It is the only source of profit for the capitalist and leads to the exploitation of the worker. Waiting passively for the final verdict of history is not making revolution. It flies in the face of revolution. It ignores the existence of bread and circuses, terror from the right, and the racism and animalism of the ruling class pigs. It doesn't take into account the fact that they know we are coming. They know how to hold on to their privilege. Could they have held it for this long otherwise? We are being repressed now. Courts that dispense no justice and concentration camps are already in existence.
they consider like the prison industrial complex as a huge plantation and a huge no they like they've been like a lot of black comrades have called it exactly that concentration camps. These are the most secret police in this country than in all others combined. Wait, there's okay there are more, not these, there are more secret police in this country than in all countries combined. So many that they constitute a whole new class that has attached itself to the power complex. Repression is here. It is time to move with determination. After our victory, no one will escape our justice with the now historical classic line, quote, "Will we didn't know," end quote. Repression is here now, and we won't reach the next level of revolutionary consciousness and activity until we meet it with a counter-terror and demonstrate to the people that we are here and resistance is possible. From the letter mailed by Jonathan Jackson, shortly before his death. Here it is. Why do we go for this old shit? Most of the fascist functionaries live as unguarded as I do. I could slip a knife between Max Rafferty's ribs. The Edge News, and DuPont's, the Rockefellers and the Morgans, all of the Gettys, Hunts and Hughes types who sneak around in armored cars and jets are just as reachable. Anyone who will come out of his bomb shelters can be had. Imagine what Nixon's armored car would look like if I stepped out of the alley and hit it with an anti-tank rocket launcher under my coat. A fireball. A ball of fire. Hell will be there. It will be their reward. Sorry. But the guerrilla needs our help. When Jonathan steps forward with his anti-Nixon rocket launcher, there should be 9 more like himself with assault rifles to close an exit path for him. And these are tactics. And there should be a political infrastructure, a cadre, not far away to explain his action and glean from them the greatest possible overall political effect.
Prestige stands between the masses and a revolt against their class enemy. The aura of magic, glamour, luster, and splendid permanence covers the fascists like a protective layer of fat. The slimy scales of majesty shield and conceal the dilapidation of the old bourgeois reign of terror. Although in reality, nothing remains but the illusion. They can still organize violence, but the Indo-Chinese have proved that to be not too formidable. Our present task is to illustrate this point forcefully to the people. The fascist industrial state can organize a ponderous mechanized violence, but this systemic, industrially based holding action is helpless before the fluid, mobile, self-impelled attrition of people's urban guerrilla warfare. With his techniques fully developed and established, the urban guerrilla launches his attacks on the corporate military police complex with some of these military objectives in mind. 1, it doesn't say 1, but this is point 1, to weaken the local guards or the security system of the dictatorship. Given the fact that we are attacking and the, quote, guerrillas defending, which means catching the government in a defensive position, with its troops immobilized in defense of an entire complex of national maintenance, with its ever-present fears of an attack on its strategic nerve centers, and without ever knowing where, how, and when that attack will come. Next, to attack on every side with many different armed groups, few in number, each self-contained and operating separately, to disperse the government forces in their pursuit of a thoroughly fragmented organization instead of offering the dictatorship the opportunity to concentrate its forces of repression on the destruction of one tightly organized system operating throughout the country.
The next point, to give proof of its combativeness. Discussions, is that decisions? I already do that. No, that's discussions, right?
That's decision.
Yeah, I always fuck those two words up. Decisions, firmness, determination, and persistence in the attack on the military dictatorship in order to permit all malcontents to follow our example and fight with urban guerrillas tactics. Meanwhile, and this is the position of a Maoist. I don't know if it's MLs, but like it used to be like in the global South being neo-colonized, it'd be from the countryside to the town centers. Now it's going to be switched with us here. I hear it's the town centers to the countryside now. So that's why they're talking about urban stuff. Meanwhile, the government, with all its problems, incapable of halting guerrilla operation in the city, will lose time and suffer endless attrition, and will finally be forced to pull back its repressive troops in order to mount guard over the banks, industries, armories, military barracks, prisons, public offices, radio and television stations, North American firms, gas shortage tanks, oil refineries, ships, airplanes, ports, residence of outstanding members of the regime, such as the ministers and generals, police stations, and official organizations, etc. Next point. To increase urban guerrilla disturbance gradually in an endless ascendancy of the unforeseen actions such that the government troops cannot leave the urban areas to pursue the guerrillas in the interior without running the risk of abandoning the cities and permitting rebellion to increase on the coast as well as the interior of the country. Next point. To oblige the army and To oblige the army and the police with the commanders and their assistants to change the relative comforts and tranquility of their barracks and their usual rest for a state of alarm and growing tensions in the expectations of attack, or in search of tracks that vanish without a trace.
Next, to avoid open battle and decisive combat with the government, limiting the struggle to brief and rapid attacks with lightning results. Last, to assure for the urban guerrilla a maximum freedom of maneuver and of action without ever relinquishing the use of armed violence, remaining firmly oriented toward helping the beginning of rural guerrilla warfare, and supporting the construction of the Revolutionary Army for National Liberation. This was by Gerasi. Prestige is an abstract and intangible. It has no material basis, no substantial objective reality to be perceived through the senses. One can't touch it or taste it, see it or smell it. It can't be heard. So how does it exist? Subjectively, in the mind's eye, after the fact of some connected circumstances that may also have been subjective. We're looking for connections. The materialist approach is to examine things in their total sequence, see them in process, not to merely establish their being in fixed sequential images, but to take in the state of being in process, infancy, maturity, decline, things in motion, processed into other things in motion. We're constantly laboring to determine that which governs, regulates, motivates all the separate but related and interrelated processes from the viewpoint that consciousness is determined by dialectical objective developments.
Jesus, like they are so dialectical. They're using Marxism. Is so amazing how he's using that. That's awesome. What's wrong? What's wrong, Rufus? You just farted. All right. The prestige of power is subjective, effect of the past, deeds. Hold on a second. I gotta see if Rufus needs to go outside. Hold on a second. Give me a pause. Come on. Let's go outside.
No problem. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. That's the end of your entertainment. More sensational, inspirational, dedicational. I don't know the next word. This is what we call the love. Ta-da.
Come on. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Sorry about that. I guess he had to go body really bad. Hey, look, it's not Pokapri. Wow. Where was I at? Prestige is a powerful. Is that where I'm at? Joe?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The prestige of power is the subjective effect of the past deeds or repetition, right? Real and fancied. Then
Reputation,
yeah, real or fancied. Then has a different definite life process. The prestige of the capitalist class inside the U.S. reached its maturity with the close of the 1860s 64 Civil War. Since that time, there has been no serious threat to their power. Their excesses have taken on a certain legitimacy through long usage. Prestige bars any serious attack on power. Do people attack a thing they consider with awe, with the sense of its legitimacy? In the process of things, the prestige of power emerges roughly in that period when power does not have to exercise its underlying basis violence. Having proved the establishment itself, it drifts, secures from any serious challenges. Its automatic defense attack instincts remain alert. Small threats are either ignored away, laughed away, or in the case that many build into something dangerous, slapped away. To the masters of capital, the most dreadful omen of all is revolutionary scientific socialism. The gravediggers invoke fear response. Prestige wanes if the first attack on its power base find it wanting. Prestige dies when it cannot prevent further attacks upon itself. All intellectual arguments against the necessity of counter-violence, even in the open stages of the People's War, against the industrial establishment should, as the one in the USA, are false. We can stop the debate. Prestige must be destroyed. People must see the venerated institutions and the, quote, omnipotent administrators, end quote, actually under physical attack. They must be assured that the heavens will not hurl lightning bolts at the people's head for challenging the rights of property.
Then, although international capitalism has shot its last bolts, it is not exactly harmless. If the threat to power is truly revolutionary, and the first step into revolutionary consciousness taken with a forceful attack upon prestige, we must anticipate reaction, accept repression's terror, and meet it with a counter-terror of our own. The gravedigger needs a bodyguard to protect him at this work, else the grave may be his own. The debate between the vanguard elements should end. The argument that the prestige of power will let itself to be educated away is too unintelligent to be allowed to stand. Waiting for power to move to its inevitable collapse is suicidal for all concerned. Black people and other third world people have the very eminent prospect of genocidal tactics to contend with. And we can now all see that the modern industrial state, motivated by the interests of exclusive groups of capitalist masters, cannot regulate itself to make possible an inclusive production and distribution of goods, or production without a massive waste of resources and destruction of all that it stands about. The debate ends, the action begins. It is not a question of the necessity of violence, but how to organize it to fit our unique situation, to tie it with flawless exactitude to our political activity, and to organize it immediately. Comrade George said, I read recently from a textbook edited by my favorite writer, W. Pomeroy, that a city street could actually be considered as a defile.
I'll read that. J.W. Forrest Pomeroy wrote of guerrilla warfare and Marxism. I read that book. It was an all right book. It goes through the different people that did utilize guerrilla warfare and tactics. It's a good book. A convoy of any kind trapped in a defile on the countryside is easy prey for the forces of positioned above and about it. Jonathan. It is absolutely certain that every fascist military thinker and official in the world has devoted time to study to the works of the great guerrilla tacticians Mao, Ho Chi Minh, Giap, Guevara, Pomeroy, Fanon, Nkrumah. The fundamental of People's War are no secret. It would seem that Giap's People's Army, People's War, or Guevara, guerrilla warfare, and the other masterworks on Poor People's War, once published for the world to study, would blunt their effectiveness at least a little. That is, until one has studied it in depth and understood. Guerrilla warfare, by its very nature, is invulnerable.
Invulnerable.
Advanced scientific guerrilla strategies work out over the first 3/4 of this century. It is not contrary to the popular image, merely a, quote, hit and run, end quote, haphazard affair, in spite of the need of improvisation and mobility, and in spite of its poverty and daring. It is scientific. A man who labored above its construction had as a task.
Can you do that sentence again?
Okay, the man who labored over his construction had as a task, oh my gosh, the forging of an instrument which would enable an indignant and weaponless people to resist and overcome the preponderous mechanism army dependent upon the industrial base and operating on systemized thought. It is a perfect tool, perfect. No establishment army can countervail it. The best example of this new fighting style, the urban guerrilla, is the spectacular success of the, oh my gosh, Tupamaroso. Tupamoros. The military army of Uruguay. National Liberation Movement. Oh my gosh, that was hard for me to read. I don't know why.
It's okay. Brilliantly organized, they have carried out well-planned operations such as burning down plants, GM, without harming a single worker, robbing impregnable fortresses such as the Casino of Punta del Este, kidnapping hated officials, ambassadors, and bankers, seizing whole towns long enough to explain their purpose and revolutionary commitment, assassinating key repressive agents such as the chief of the police special squad, sabotaging imperialism's industrial military complexes, and raiding police military outposts to capture arms and ammunition. This is also by Grassi, and then Grassi outlines their fighting strategy as follows. The objective is manifold. 1. To threaten the establishment, cause it to panic, and make serious tactical mistakes, such as resorting to mass repression, which radicalizes the population against them. 2. To establish the underground revolutionary apparatus, including both active participants and trusted but passive collaborators, who will later carry out the liaison communication, logistic, and propaganda needs of the revolutionary armies in the cities. 3. To test new recruits and relative security. 4. Though police infiltrators are bound to creep in and stay in the organization for future need, even if they have to kill their own to do so. The fact that for a long time urban groups will operate independently of each other keeps sweeping arrests of urban guerrillas down to a minimum.
4. To demoralize the rank and file and even the officers of the repressive forces, as they see themselves constantly but unexpectedly under attack. It is said that to unalive policemen indiscriminately is to forget the working class background of the cop on the beat. This is as absurd as trying to save an ordinary soldier whom the Vietnamese must unalive to survive. 5. To panic local capitalists to withdraw their funds from specific areas, thus hurting the local warlords and politicians who profit from these investments. 6. To frighten away foreign investors, which will affect the whole bureaucratic oligarchy. 7. To force the U.S. to consistently extend its interventions, which will tax its resources, hence discontent at home, and spread its imperialistic arms, rendering it more vulnerable abroad. At this point, I must make clear that I am certainly not warning the military establishment or their capitalist masters, nor am I advocating the overthrowing of the established American government. When I use the initials USA in these observations, it must be understood that I could quite as easily be referring to the Union of South Africa. So it's a little bit of a trick, you know? The government of the USA and all that it stands for, all that it represents, must be destroyed. This is the starting point and the end. We have the means to this end. The problem is to develop acceptance of their use. The first struggle is one waged within our own minds. Your turn.
I was just typing.
You want me to do it?
We must in all haste transcend the intellectual inhibitions that preclude support of at least the minimum level of violence that must develop concomitantly with each political thrust. Can we look up what concomitantly is? Because we must develop concomitantly with each political thrust. So I was wondering what that meant. Are you going to look communist?
It's concomitantly.
Okay, and what's the definition for that?
At the same time, simultaneously.
At the same time, simultaneously. Thank you so much. All right. Our attitudes must change before we can expect any response from the people, workers, students, lumpen proletariat. We must accept the eventuality of bringing the USA to its knees, accept the closing off of critical sections of the city with barbed wire, armored pig carriers crisscrossing the city streets, soldiers everywhere, Tommy guns pointed at stomach level, smoke curling black against the daylight sky, the smell of cordite, house-to-house searches, doors being kicked down, the commonness of unaliving. Then we must learn the forms of resistance, the booby trap, the silenced pew and rifle, the pitting of streets to slow them down, the wrecking of heavy equipment to block their efficient movements, false walls, hidden sub-basements, tunnels, Vietnamese style, destruction of the critical elements of the facilities that support establishment order. We must learn the value of infiltration. It works better for us than it does for the opposition. We simply stop allowing ourselves to be hunted and do some stalking of our own. Their secret police aren't really too secret at all. Right now, we can go numbering, naming, compiling information on them all. They're too visible to be safe. Revolution is aggressive. Just where are we? Where is this country skidding to? In the morning, the fight will have begun. In considering all of the establishment's protective agencies, even those that are quasi-secret, none can hide themselves. Any establishment, institution, or organization that enjoys prestige, that exists openly above ground, is, by this definition, quote, weak, or at least vulnerable to a determined attack.
When the purpose of our military tactics is to build the guard, some object or point of supposed advantage, the defenders can actually be thought as being under siege. The guard himself is himself a standing target. The fortress and all its resources, mechanized and human, for all its imposing strength, cannot exist for long under the persistent attack, deprived of the opportunity of replenish repairs, renewing itself. If the opposed military forces that have laid the siege are nameless, faceless, numberless, indistinguishable from all the millions that exist all about the establishment, when the establishment's military forces sally forth from their, what is that word? Beleaguers? Beleaguered. Beleaguered fortresses to do battle. What must be the result? They must cause suffering to the innocent, since it is impossible for them to know us, thus making new enemies. They will restrict the freedom of our known or suspected political parties and projects that are welded to the people, thus restricting the freedom of others who may have been neutral or sympathetic to them. They will make themselves targets for our hidden machine guns, sniper rifles, silent pistols, mortars, anti-tank rockets, flamethrowers. Our counterterrorism will bring on the stage to fascist repression. There is no question in our minds, black men, black people, men under hatches, about the nature of the ruling class, the exceedingly violent disposition of the USA. Ruling class is well documented, with just a glance into our lives and an order of our deaths. The point is to reveal this, quote, senseless violence to the entire revolutionary class or classes.
Read one more paragraph and we stop.
Okay, counterterrorism is a mighty tool and the only one that is our disposal in the opening stages of the People's War. Notice he says counterterrorism. He's saying that the USA is the terrorist group. So notice that. In some cases, in other revolutionary society, this level of violence alone was sufficient to win all the demands of the people. However, I am sure that here it will not be sufficient because of the complexity of the USA class structure and its stockpile of potential further violence. Many of the small demands of the sizable portion of the population are slowly being met as the expense of all the rest of us and the world's people. The new pig-oriented class has been created at the bottom of our society, from which the ruling class will be always able to draw some support. Consequently, our task will be to move from counter-terrorist attacks into second stage of large guerrilla unit operations.
All right. So what I was noticing in this last paragraph is a new pig-oriented class has been created at the bottom of our society, and I'm thinking that we might have created another one with the cold frozen water.
With the what?
With the frozen water. What is
What about
frozen
frozen
water?
water?
The word that you can't say on TikTok without getting bananaed.
You can't say ice on TikTok? Okay, why can't you say that word?
It takes down all your videos and all your stuff that says.
I have no videos. No videos.
Yeah. But
Zero
I'm just-
content.
Yeah, but you're saying it and it can be taken down.
I've
But I was
seen
just saying-
people. I've seen people have backgrounds that says "fuck ice" with an ice cube. Never taken down.
Right, because they didn't say ice. So when they're talking
Said
about a
fuck
new
ice.
pig-oriented class has been created at the bottom of our society, from which the ruling class will be always able to draw some support, is I think the new class of people that we've just built up.
What are the new class of people we just built up? Is it who? Okay. So yeah, this book also tells us is basically a learning manual of what we can do potentially and what we should do potentially. This book has been processed like what in the 70s and brought out later on. So this book is kind of prophetic in a way that it's time. It's been past time. You know, I encourage everybody to like even read this book on your own and study it and help it draw to other conclusions and maybe even bring you down the path of understanding what guerrilla warfare and guerrilla tactics mean and how serious it is, you know, especially with what's going on. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I'm gonna anybody here have any questions or anything? I'll do the best I can with the knowledge that I know. Anybody? Doesn't look like it, honestly. Which is fine.
I think we're good.
Which is fine. Okay, then we'll be continuing this. Let me look at something here. We'll be continuing this next tomorrow, and I can't wait. I love this section, but I love what's the next section going to be called? It's far away, I think. Yeah, let's see. The next section, I think. Let me get to it. It's going to take me a little bit. The American Mind. Okay, that's the next session, is the American Mind and American Justice. And then one of my favorite parts is there's Towards United Front. Beautiful section. And then after the revolution has failed, on withdraw. And then there's one more. The best section fascism in the most advanced form is here in America. That's going to be a good section. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'll close it down. I appreciate people that came by and stayed as long as they could.